Hello and welcome back to Wisdom in Action, the podcast where we explore what it takes to bridge the gap between knowing and doing, because that's where the real wisdom is born. I'm Oster Putney, a resilience coach and podcast strategist, and I created the space to have honest conversations with real experts and bring you practical insights you can apply, not just think about. Today, we're joined by Scott Grandy, founder of White Knight Solutions Group, a preparedness professional with over 22 years of civilian and community-focused experience in emergency preparedness, medical training, situational awareness, and continuity planning, and a former Army National Guard member whose work is deeply rooted in service, resilience, and faith. Scott, welcome to Wisdom in Action.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here.
I'm honored to have you on, and I do look forward to this conversation. So to start us off, what is one piece of wisdom that changed everything once you started applying it?
Well, I guess something I said to somebody recently is, there's nothing to it but to do it. When you decide that there's something there, you've just got to do it. You've got to step out on faith sometimes and just know that um, what's meant to be will be. And just look to the right places for your direction. So that's my starting point for most things.
I'm curious, what would be one of the most recent things that have been you getting to do it?
Well, this is one of them. But I have just recently started within my company. I am starting a ministry portion of it where I am going to provide my services um, to churches, synagogues, houses of worship, and they can pay what they are led to pay. So if they're a small church that doesn't have much financial resources, then they can say, we just can't pay for this, and I'll provide the service. And then some churches may pay more than more than I might charge them, and that will help support the other the giving it to the churches that can't pay. So that's I'm launching that in the new year. I've put out a few things about it so far, but it's really going to kick into action starting in the new year.
Awesome. So I wanted to talk about, well, one of the main reasons we're here is the preparedness. Um,
Mhm.
can you maybe define what it is or what it looks like before we get into talking more specifically about it?
Yes. There's several different definitions of preparedness, but what I like to think of preparedness as is um, using wisdom to steward your resources so that um, if something bad happens, um, you it's not as bad as it would have been. Nobody can
Mm,
mitigate everything. Um, I like to say that every person that I help be prepared is one less person that's going to be dependent on somebody else with the government, you know, in a natural disaster or any kind of emergency. And I try not to use the word emergency preparedness
hmm
because I feel that if you are prepared, many situations that some would consider an emergency won't be an emergency to you.
mm. Can you expand on that thought because I think it's quite important,
Um,
or like
so,
give an example?
well, this is the way I've always been for most of my life. I am a worst case scenario thinker.
Uh,
So, it makes me great at my job, makes me great at running this company. Sometimes it makes life a little rough, but um, so I have always just kept extra things on hand. Um, and so when COVID hit several years ago and there was no toilet paper or paper towels, things like that in the stores, I went from February or March when everything hit, and I didn't have to buy paper products until June
mm.
when the stock was back, just because I always keep some extra on hand. Um, so that's one thing that it wasn't an emergency for me. Whereas many people, that was an emergency. How am I going to get toilet paper? How am I going to get paper towels? How am I going to get all these different things? And that was not an emergency for me. So if you are ready ahead of time, it might be a minor inconvenience, but it's not going to be an emergency. And I also think that the mindset and situational awareness portion of preparedness can help you avoid situations that would become an emergency.
Mm. So, situational awareness, can you describe what it looks like, or even like how to know you have it or don't have it?
Ooh, um, really, it's just being aware of your surroundings,
Uh-huh.
um, and um, thinking ahead, looking at possible scenarios
Mm.
that could happen. Um, One of the biggest things is, and I didn't come up with this quote. I heard it somewhere, and somebody says, "Just get your head out of your app." Um, you know, do not be looking at your phone. Um, there have been studies where they've talked to criminals and just watching people. They showed videos of people walking down a street like that had been taken from a camera on the side of a building, and they said, "Who would you pick out as somebody that you might choose as a victim?" And almost all of the criminals picked the same person or same people because they had a certain the way they were walking, they might have had their phone in their hand looking down. It's just knowing how to avoid problems and looking ahead. And there's a saying, don't go stupid places at stupid times with stupid people. And that's you know
That's a
don't
wisdom in itself.
yes, and don't walk down the dark alley at 2 a.m. by yourself. Or if you have a friend that likes to go out and get hammered, and you know that when he gets drunk, he becomes, the big bully and wants to fight everybody, don't go out with him, because that's the stupid people thing. And um, stupid times is nothing good happens after midnight, a lot of people say. So some of it's just those kind of things, and basically looking around, knowing what's around you. Um, you know, I've got my family trained so that when I go to a restaurant, they know that I'm sitting so that I can see the front door, so that I can see, what's coming in. And they know that um, every restaurant has an exit out of the kitchen because that's where they bring in their supplies. So you don't necessarily need to think about going out the way you came in, because that's probably where the threat is coming from. If there is a threat, and you can go out the back. So when you come in, look around, look for exits, look for where the kitchen is, those kinds of things that can help you, again, avoid the emergency. If you see something bad is starting to happen, you can slip out the back and it's not an emergency anymore.
Mhm. It's interesting because I think for a lot of people that's not the first, and especially I think women, that's not the first place to go with that like awareness. Or I don't even say especially women. I think if somebody has gone through trauma, a lot of times they are super cautious. So there's different kind of scenarios, but where would you say what would be a good place to even start with building these skills if some people listening might identify, well, the person you were talking about, that's kind of me.
Yeah. I mean, one of the first things to do is realize that um if you're by yourself and you're out in public, put the phone away. If you have to if you have to do something with your phone, stop. If you're out in public, like step up against a wall so your back's to the wall and look at your phone as quickly as you can, and then put it away and move on. Um, One of these things that's hit me lately, that I'm a traditionalist. I don't like change. Um, I
Does
like
any of us like it?
well, some people do. I
Yeah.
like to have a key that starts my vehicle.
Mhm.
And I have that with my current vehicle. I can unlock it from outside, but I have a key that starts it. Um, Now my wife, her car has one of those key fobs that as soon as you get close enough, you can unlock the car just by pushing the button on the door handle
Mm.
and opening it. And then you can just push the button and the car starts. At first, I didn't like that, but I've realized that that's a wonderful thing for preparedness and safety because
Mm.
you don't have to be digging for your keys. You can keep your keys in your pocket. All you have to do is walk up to your car, hit the button, open it, close the door, and push a button. There's no fumbling with keys. There's no taking time to figure out where any of that. So those things are great. So and not having to worry about fumbling with those things allows you to be looking around and checking things out before you get to your car. And I'm kind of aiming this at the woman that you mentioned, for um in parking lots and things like that. Always try to park near a if it's nighttime, park under a light if possible. Um, if it's a parking garage, park as close to, where you're gonna be coming out of the stairwell or the elevator, park as close to that as you can. Um, look into your car before you get in. Um, look around before you get in. It's just simple things that don't take training. They don't cost money. It's just making an effort, and it just takes you changing your habits a little bit.
And I'm thinking where to get, even like what you said, okay, park under the light. For some people it might be like, oh, I haven't thought of it, I haven't even considered it, I didn't even know what to think about. It's kind of like I didn't know what I didn't know kind of
Hmm.
scenario. How to even find or learn about what are some of the things for me to keep in mind, or what are some of the things to look at, or how to even, because I think in part it gets to the point where it's like your second nature. That's what you do. But before you get there, like going through that process, what are some of the things that could actually help to even know, to be aware of, like, what should I actually focus on?
I mean, if people have questions about this or where to start, they can reach out to me. Um, and there's a lot of other people out there that teach this kind of stuff. There's books that are great at helping you to learn these things. Um, there's a man, his name is Yosef Badu. He was in the Marine Corps. He helped develop a program with them, and he now has a company that's focused on helping people learn situational awareness. So you can look him up. There's a great book called Left of Bang that helps you develop some of these types of skills. And it I will say, Left of Bang gets into a lot of in the weeds in it. So it's teaching you words that you might not have known before, but the concepts are easy to understand. Just don't worry about their doctrinal lingo. But those are two great places to start. And again, you can reach out to me and I can point you in some directions. And there's different, depending on what your situation is, what you're wanting to how you're wanting to use this. Is this personal? Is this professional? Is this, to help your church? Those kinds of things. I can point you in different directions for more specific um, ways of doing things.
Mm. Yeah, that's good to know. We're also gonna have your details below as well, so people can find you and get to you. The question I had, maybe to somebody listening, it might be like, this sounds like a lot of work, or it does seem like being naive is kind of easier or less effort. Just going along with your day and trusting or hoping that nothing wrong will happen, or nothing has ever happened to me. And, kind of wanting to go with that mindset of either I will deal with it when it happens, or why should I be doing this or looking into this, because it seems like it will make me super hyper aware of every single thing that could happen or should happen, and to the point where I can't really be present in my day to day as I'm walking down the street or whatever might be the case. Just throwing out the scenario for you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you said hoping things, and hope is not a plan.
Mm.
Um, so, and this doesn't once you start doing this a little bit, um, and say when you're going to go out, today you're going to focus on it for the first 15 minutes that you're out in public. And then you just go back to the way you normally do things. But a lot of
Mm,
this isn't even, I mean, you talk about being present. Well, you're more present in the now if you're looking around instead of walking down the street with your phone in your hand,
that's true.
and so it's easy to, some of these things are easy. They're just breaking bad habits. You really don't have to, in some ways, you don't have to learn much new. You just have to break the old. And that will
Uh,
automatically put you into, if you put the phone down, you're halfway there in some senses because you don't have that distraction. So now your head's up, you're looking around and just looking like you are aware, situational awareness. As if you look like you're aware of what's going on around you, that already makes you a harder target for somebody when you're out in public.
mm,
Because they want the person that's not going to fight. They want the person that looks like they're an easy target. And you said at one point, I'll deal with it when it happens. And people often will say, I will rise to the occasion. No.
mm,
Through my career, I've learned you don't rise to the occasion, you fall to your level of training.
mm.
So if you haven't trained yourself for certain things, you're not going to all of a sudden know how to defend yourself from an attacker because you're being attacked. You know, you will know how to defend yourself from an attacker if you've trained in self-defense of some kind. Um, but you might not need that self-defense training if you're situationally aware. Again,
Uh,
that's why I said that, going back to what I said in the beginning, if you are prepared, often what could have been an emergency isn't. And by being aware, you may never know what you avoided. It's hard to prove a negative. Um, there might have been a time when somebody was watching you as a target and they said, "Oh, well, she's looking around, she's walking with a purpose. I don't think she's I don't think she's going to be an easy target for me. I'll wait for the next
mm,
one to come by with her head in her phone and won't see me coming up, won't hear, headphones in. When I go out, walking or jogging, I only ever put one headphone in so that I can still hear what's going on
uh,
around me. Um, you know, that's another thing because if you have them both in, you're not going to hear anything. If you're out walking or something, if you only have one in, you can hear somebody coming up behind you, those kind of things. It's not, there's no expense, there's nothing to buy. It's just taking the time to think about things and be more aware. And again, I go back to the fact that you're more present by by doing some of these things than if you're like, oh, I'm just going to go out my day and walking down the street with your, facing your phone. If you're looking around on that jog, you're going to see things you might not have seen before. Oh, those are pretty flowers in front of that person's house, or, just things like that you may not have noticed if you were just going about your normal day, or you're in the city and you're walking down the street. Oh, that's a store I want to go into. I didn't even realize that was there, and I've been walking past here for the last 6 months every day, and I
that
didn't
is
see it.
very true. I have experienced it where the less I'm in my phone when I'm out and about, um, not even from like security perspective, but from that presence perspective, like you are more present and you're less literally distracted from
Yes,
life.
yes, and I always feel like when I'm out and about, usually if I'm getting a call, if I'm getting a text, it's nothing that's that life shattering, that necessary, that if I wait 5 minutes till I can get somewhere more appropriate to um view that, then I just don't bother answering it. Sometimes I don't even look. I'll just let it buzz in my pocket and be like, I can deal with that later because right now I'm focused on, or I'm not focused, I'm present in what I'm doing. And I have a wife, I have kids. I mean, my kids are grown, but I feel that I'm responsible for my wife's safety when I'm out in public. So she can look into her phone, she can stare at the windows in the stores. I'm I'm her bodyguard.
Mm.
That's my job in as part of who I am in this family is I am my wife's protector.
What would be your I'm curious, like what would be your message to men out there? when it comes to preparedness and being that protector?
Well, I think that that is one of our God-given roles is to be the protector of our families. And that I've kind of, without even realizing that, at some points in my life, I was doing that. Out of college, I joined the Army National Guard, um, and I did that because the Guard, the National Guard, also gives back to their states. It's not just going to war. We respond to natural disasters and things like that. I was activated for a huge blizzard right outside of Washington, D.C. back in the 90s, and supported that. And I was doing airport security after 9/11, those kinds of things. Um, so I've always been that protector, but that's a mindset that I think m- men need to have is that they are their family's protector. And if that, if the only thing you do to be a better protector is when you're out in public, you put your phone down and you're watching around so that you are the first one that knows if something bad is happening and you can take care of your family. It's as easy as that. I mean, that's a great start. Um, I know a lot of people aren't firearms enthusiasts, but I think that carrying a concealed weapon as if you know how to use it is a major part of things. Um, and learning some self-defense if possible. I know Brazilian jiu-jitsu is all the rage right now for a lot of people, but I'm not a fan of that because a big part of that is going to the ground with one person. Um, and you never know if something happens if that person has friends.
Mm,
I have been away from it for a little while, but I was studying Krav Maga, which is a much different style of things. It's you try to avoid going to the ground. It is a self-defense, a martial art that there is no competition version. There is no sport version of this. It is purely a self-defense
mm,
martial art. So I think, learning some of that. I mean, because if you know something, you're ahead of a lot of the people out there. You might not be ahead of the hardened criminal, but if you're out someplace and it's the obnoxious drunk that's trying to start a fight with you, just having some training can make you a harder target. You learn to carry yourself differently when you know things, and people can see that. And you can look at sometimes you can just look at somebody and go, I don't think I want to mess with him. And it's not necessarily the guy that's 6'5", and tattooed up like a biker. It can be a guy like me that's, 5'7" and a little bit overweight. But I know the difference now between having when I was taking classes and now I carry myself differently because I'm not as confident as I was. And that confidence can be one of those things, again, going back to what I talked about earlier with the criminals watching those videos. They could see that you're walking with confidence and you're gonna be the one that they avoid. And
mm.
again, that goes back to my whole thing of avoidance. You know, there's a saying that, how can you be guaranteed to win a fight? Not be in it. That's the only fight that you're ever guaranteed to win is the one you're not in. So avoidance is a big part of what I believe in.
Yeah, and it is kind of to your point that awareness of why should I get in an environment that probably has more likelihood or probability of something bad happening than not going into it or being in it. Um, I'm curious, what could or do you have any advice when it comes to cultivating that like family protectors mindset?
Um, it starts with yourself, and then once you start building your own confidence, you can talk to your family, you get them to be involved. Um, you can, you teach them like my family knows how to sit at a table in a
Mm,
restaurant. They know where I'm going to want to sit, so everybody takes their spaces. Um, when we're walking along a street, my wife is always closer to the buildings and I'm closer to the street.
mm,
Um, you can have family code words for things so that if if you sense danger without yelling danger and freaking out everybody around you, you say the family code word and everybody knows that they need to gather on you. You know, if you're walking strung out somewhere, everybody gets closer to you so that you can have them all together and figure out what you're going to do from there. It's very simple things. And
Mm.
again, no money, no real training. You know, it's just talking about things. Talking about things is great. You know, in my professional world of working for the government as a contractor, we do things called tabletop exercises, where you're given this scenario and we sit around a table and we talk about what would happen. So we figure out
Mm.
what would work, what might not work by talking to all the people involved. You can do that with your family. You sit down and go, okay, if we're going to Disneyland next week, so you know that's a big place. Let's talk about what could happen. What are we going to do for certain things? Um, what's our code word going to be? Well, it can't be Mickey Mouse because we're going to be saying Mickey Mouse every 10 minutes and everybody's going to be freaking out. But, you know, um, so it needs to be things that are easy to do, easy to learn, easy to remember. Um, and talking about it, visualizing. I'm a big proponent of visualization. Um, I forget where this quote came from, but somebody says that your your body can't go where your mind has not been. So
Mm.
if you're thinking of things ahead of time and just running through scenarios of what could possibly happen, that helps you out a lot. There have been studies like with Olympic athletes um, that will sit and just visualize their event and visualize their event, and it actually improves their performance. Um, I have
Just
seen
as
a
much, if not more. Like, I have background in sports psychology, so I have read those researches and heard of them. The power of visualizing, and it is very, very powerful.
yeah, I saw one study where they had like 50 people or 100 people that 50 of them visualized shooting a free throw, and then they had 50 people that practiced every day shooting a free throw. And after you know, X amount of time, the people that visualized it actually did better than the people that were practicing it. Because the people that were visualizing it were visualizing doing it perfectly each time.
Mm.
Um, I don't know if you're familiar with the Blue Angels. They're a our Navy's like demonstrate aircraft demonstration team. They do all the fancy flying and make these
Ah, okay.
formations. Before they do every show that morning, they sit in a room and they talk through the show and they all have their hands like where they would be on their controls, and they're moving their hands as they would move their controls as the commander is giving the signals of what they're going to do. So they're all talking about it, all
Mm.
thinking through it, and they're visualizing it and moving their hands as they would. And if the Blue Angels are doing that, because these guys are flying hundreds of miles an hour, you know, 3 feet away from each other, if they think that works, that's a pretty good recommendation for me. You know, I'll take it from the pros on that one.
So what could be like good ways to practice that visualizing when it comes to the preparedness?
It can be all kinds of things. What think about what would you do if your house caught on fire? What would your
Mm.
first reaction be? Um, if you're walking to your car and you hear somebody coming up behind you, what would your first reaction be? And then start think about your first reaction, and then what would your next step be? And think about how you could respond to that, or think about I'm going to somewhere. What can I be doing to avoid those problems? And
Mm.
again, that's you don't want to be parked in the dark portion of the parking lot. You want to be closer to a light. So it comes back to avoidance. I'm always going to come back to avoidance. Whatever you can do to keep something from happening, you want to cut down on the potential of having someone break into your house. Well, have things that show that you're a hard target. You have the system for your sign for your alarm system. You have cameras outside that they can see. You have motion activated lights. So it's easy to think about if you stand in your house and you look outside and you go, if I was trying to break into my house, what would I do?
Mm.
And by thinking about if I was going to try to break in here, where's the best place to be hidden from sight, and then you make those places not easily accessible anymore, or they're oh, that's in shadow. Well, you're going to put a light there so that it's not in shadow anymore. Those kinds of things.
Yeah, that's interesting because even like as you're walking through them, I do see how that visualization can work. Even people listening, like as you talk through it, they can listen and be like, "Huh, okay. So what would I do? How would I deal with it? What could be better response, or how can I avoid it even happening?" Um, and and that it does sound like a very good practice to even train that skill set of being more aware, without having to put yourself in situations where you have to.
Right. Yeah, and this is not paranoia. I don't want anybody to be paranoid. I don't want anybody to be thinking I'm fear mongering, but um, I know I remember earlier in this, you had said people might think, well, this has never happened to me. Well, it's never happened to anybody else until it happened to them.
True.
Um, I work with churches doing safety for churches, and some of them will say, well, nothing's ever happened here. Well, nothing had ever happened at any of these other churches until it happened. So you can't go on, you can't completely go on past history to say, well, nothing's ever happened to me, so nothing ever will. Your
Yeah.
first time you got in a car accident, you could, before that, you could say, I've never been in a car accident, so it's not going to happen to me, but it just might. And so, that's why you have car insurance in case something like that happens. This is a kind of personal insurance. If you're getting prepared, you're helping to mitigate effects, and to be able to avoid potential problems. And that's again, it goes back to that fight that I talked about. If the fight you win is the fight you're never in, so being prepared can keep you from situations, and you will never know what you kept yourself from. And so it's kind of people can say, well, this isn't paying off. I haven't avoided anything. Well, how do you know what you avoided? You
Mm.
can't prove that that guy was looking at you and didn't attack you, or that burglar was looking at your house and didn't break in because of what you've done.
Yeah, that is true. One thing I wanted to do also is to zoom out a bit and talk about the. I like what you wrote initially that we can make communities more resilient, one prepared citizen at a time. Can you expand on that?
Yes, that's something that I really like. Again, it goes back to if there's a natural disaster, a hurricane, a flood, a tornado, if you were prepared, if say it's a hurricane and your power's out, you have a generator so that you have some power. You had some food stored that'll last you a week, 2 weeks, then you're good. If you have the generator and some food, you can cook that food. You can keep your freezer running. So you're not going to be standing in line, um, needing help. And if you have enough, you can help your neighbors.
Mm.
So the more people that are prepared in that way, the better off the entire community is because that's less resources that are needed to be expended, um, coming from somewhere else. And if you can help your neighbor, I mean, it's love your neighbor as yourself. Um, I'm a firm believer in that. That's part of who I am and my faith is those kinds of things. So, um, if you can take care of yourself, and then if you can take care of your neighbor, and if you get them to start then taking care of themselves, and the more people that do that, the less um, they're going to be reliant on somebody else if something bad happens. And I think it needs to be something I don't think we preach that enough to people. I mean, FEMA does, campaigns about things, but I think the more that we reach out to each other and try to help each other, the better off our communities are. And I think, this modern age, yes, we have social media, but it makes us antisocial. Um, the more you get to
And
know your
more
neighbors,
selfish.
yes, and the more you get to know your neighbors and become friends with them and talk about things, um, then if your little neighborhood is better off than neighborhoods around you, then that's a neighborhood less that needs to take resources during an emergency.
That was kind of the question or like follow-up question that I would have is because I have noticed that especially with like the social media and all that, we have become, and I think especially like younger generations, because we consume it so much, where to some of them that's more of a reality than reality, where there is that aspect of making it more where you focus more on yourself, you become more self-centered, you become more in some ways like selfish. Do you have any advice when it comes to cultivating more of that community mindset, or that's like helping your neighbor like you would want to be helped yourself?
Yeah, sometimes you just got to step out of your comfort zone. I am by nature an introvert. Um,
Oh, relatable.
and luckily my wife is not. So, my wife is good about, seeing neighbors out because we have a dog, so we walk the dog through the neighborhood, and she just starts talking to people. And next thing we know, oh, well, we have this in common. And, we've done a couple of years. We've done in the fall, we'll have, like on a Friday night, we live on a cul-de-sac in a neighborhood that is a dead end neighborhood. So I tell our neighbors, hey, we're gonna, do hot chocolate and marshmallows and stuff on this night over in our cul-de-sac. Well, you get some of the people to come over, you start talking, and you just become, just knowing each other is a start. I mean, you don't start off with, hey, I'm Scott and I like to be prepared. What about you? How can I help you do that? But it develops over time, and then you find out that, there are people in your neighborhood where you can um share your skills kind of thing. Um, one of our neighbors is a police officer. One of our neighbors is a firefighter who's married to a nurse. Um, those kinds of things are nice to know in an emergency. If you're not sure whether, if a hurricane comes through and there's a lot of trees down and you're not sure if the ambulance is going to get to your house and something happens, well, I know that our neighbor is a nurse. Maybe we can just have her come
Mm,
over here and check you out to see if how bad is your illness? Do you need to go to the hospital, or can we treat this some other way? Knowing those kinds of things is nice, and just being able to um, trade things. We barter with one of our neighbors raises chickens, so they give us eggs. My wife is a awesome cook, so sometimes she'll just cook something for them, or she started growing some herbs and stuff out back. So, oh, here, do you want some thyme? Do you want some rosemary or whatever the different herbs are? So it's a little bit of a barter system, things like that. So it's um just getting to know people, and I know that that is hard for some people. It's hard for me. That's why my wife takes the lead and then just brings me in, "Hey, we're going over here." Friday night, this in a couple of days, we're having our neighborhood friends come over. Just we're having a little open house so that our friends and neighbors can come over and we can all talk and enjoy some time together. But that's where things start. You got to talk. You got to get to know each other. And I think social media and then COVID-19 compounded that because nobody wanted to get near each other for all that time. We were, so I think it's an effort now. It's especially for the younger generation. I mean, I have a 23-year-old daughter, and she's the exemplar of it. She doesn't she doesn't want to talk to people. She doesn't like to talk on the phone. I was like, okay, I mean, I don't like to talk to people in person, but I'm willing to talk to somebody on the phone because I can hang up at any time
ah.
if necessary, I mean, but it's harder to just walk away from in the middle of a face-to-face conversation. But I'd rather have a phone conversation, but she won't even do that. It's
Yeah, it's one of the things that like with my other podcast, I'm starting to do more like solo episodes, and the thought there is to help like my generation and younger people with these things, because initially if you grow up where the only communication, real communication or sense of vulnerability that you might have is behind a screen, because that's also where a lot of times we can hide, then that becomes your normal, where now like I would be at cafe and I see people, they are together but they're on their phones, so they're not really present to each other, where
right.
it is a skill that our environment doesn't necessarily support us in building that skill. It actually kind of takes us away from it, but then there starts to get that sense of loneliness, or in some cases even like depression and things like that, where a lot of it does come from that lack of, and even like as you were talking, I was thinking that that lack of connection, but also if you're not in like contact with your neighbors or people around you, now it can start to feel actually scarier because it feels like it's just you. It's not like there's a community that you're surrounded with or people that you could go to or have, even if it's just having conversations. But there's this huge, what I have seen, and I have gone through it myself, that kind of that epidemic of loneliness where you isolate yourself,
Mm-hmm.
because that's actually what most people that are like my age or younger, like they just grow up with, like being behind a seat, behind a screen, and that's their normal. But at the same time, it does have consequences, and it isn't as, it is a challenge to start to get out there and have those conversations. And because they are not perfect, there'll be some awkwardness and some kind of disease as you have them. And it is something that until we start to take those first steps, until we start to have conversations, we start to connect with people, we can't really see them or fully understand the importance of it.
Yeah, and when you don't connect with people, it's very easy to get into an us and them mindset or me against you, however you want to look at it. But if it's harder to, hate's a very strong word, but it's harder to have animosity towards somebody that you know. It's easy to sit back and the abstract other that you don't know, that you can have animosity towards them. And so
It's a good
I
point.
think that's part of, what's happening in not just here in America, but all over the world. There's so much more um, division because people aren't interacting personally; they're interacting through social media. So it's easier to raise that rhetoric, and be more angry towards other people that you don't know. If you sat down with that person at dinner and said, "Okay, let's just talk and get to know each other," you might not have those same feelings once you got to know them and know why they believe what they believe. And but it's
Even if you disagreed with them, it's
yeah,
very different in real life.
yeah. I mean, I disagree with a lot of people, but I'm still friends with them. I mean, I don't think that because you disagree with somebody that you can't be friends. I mean, I wouldn't want to be friends with everybody who's just like me because then that's no fun. I mean, it's like, when people in power or high places get surrounded by yes men, then nothing ever is ever going to get better because there's no dissent. There's no, well, what about this? It's or that won't work, boss. We tried that and it didn't work. So let's avoid it. If everybody just says, "Oh, whatever you want," that there's no there's no way that you're going to improve or move forward in any way if there is never any dissent or discussion or pushback in some way. Now, all that has to be moderated. It's but
You know what
I
I'm thinking? It might be that social media maybe has removed that consequences of you saying something rude or unpleasant, because in real life when you have that conversation there will be some consequences where at the very least you will see the person's emotions and how it makes them feel in that moment.
yeah, and I mean I am not advocating violence here, but
Yeah.
when I was a kid, because I'm on the verge of Gen X slash baby boomer. Um, when I was a kid, if there was a bully, you either just gave in or you stood up and you fought for yourself, whether that was literally or figuratively. But now it's all, you know, online. It's not just you and the bully. The bully gets their friends and it's just, and because people are isolated anyway, that person has nobody to turn to.
Mm.
They're getting all this through their phone and their computer. They're not sitting with their bunch of friends where their friends can help stand up for them, or this isn't in public where I've got to look you in the face and say something bad to you and everybody else is around can defend you, whether that be verbally or physically if necessary. All this is, and I think that's why there's so many issues with young people today. Uh, I think social media is one of the worst things that's ever happened to society, to civilization.
Yeah, it can definitely turn things for the bad, and it can cause a lot of anxiety and imposter syndrome, lack of confidence, and bullying as
Yep,
well on top of it. So
because
it
there's no
is
consequences.
exactly.
Keyboard commandos, I can say anything I want to you because you're 1,000 miles away. What are you going to do? Whereas if I was in your face and said it, there might be
You
some
probably wouldn't.
consequences. Yeah. Yeah, you wouldn't have, the backbone to say it to me to my face. And
Yeah,
that's something that I just think is bad. And that leads into, I mean, social media leads into all kinds of other things. You know, I don't think that kids under a certain age should have phones, or if they do, they shouldn't have them in their rooms at night. Because that can lead to all kinds of terrible things. That's another, part of something that I have been getting more and more involved in is like looking at the ways to stop trafficking in different ways. Um, I heard somebody one time say that, um, letting your kid take their phone into their bedroom at night is like, you know, letting them take, the whole world in there with them because you can't monitor what they're doing. It's some of the things I've seen where I've seen people create a fake profile, and within 15 seconds, they were having predators hitting on this. It says that I'm a girl that's 13 years old, and some 50-year-old guy starts chatting them up right away. And if you, there's only one way to prevent that. Don't let your kid get on the internet, or
yeah.
be alone. You've got to monitor things. Um, I I am slowly learning about this, but I wish I had known some of this stuff 10, 15 years ago because I have 3 girls. So I would have liked to have known this, when they were growing up, some of the things I should have been doing to prevent, um, the possibility of bad things happening.
Well, this actually, like, maybe we can quickly touch on the preparedness for parents, if you have any advice there. Also from your own experience.
Yeah.
We're
Um,
going to the next podcast.
yeah. Part 2. Um, I'll be a repeat. Um, I am not sure. I mean, every kid's different, every parent's different. Um, one thing, and I can say this looking back, I wish that my wife and I had either been able to afford private school or been able to homeschool. There was just so much toxicity, that my kids were surrounded by. Um, and it goes back to the social media thing, a lot of that, and just people that kids that even though they might be impersonate, they're still willing to say things, do things because they weren't raised right. And maybe that's a broad statement, but people don't have the manners not to say things that they shouldn't say anymore. Um, you know, I just, that's one thing. I wish I had waited longer to give them access to cell phones. Um, Maybe I've kept them on a flip phone for a while before they got their smartphones. Um, but you gotta monitor your kids. There's programs out there that you can put on phones to be able to see who they're interacting with. Um, and because my kids are so much older now, I haven't done the research into some of these things that I should. Um, I will say to parents, there is a Facebook page called Officer Gomez. He is a school resource officer. He's a police officer that works in, I think, middle schools. I forget where he is, but he is always posting tips and things and stuff he's finding out from the kids th- that what's going on, what's happening. He takes that information and he sends it out to the parents so that they know what's going on too. Um, so that there's things you can find out about certain apps that you might think are safe that are not. Games that your kids are playing. I recently watched part of a podcast, and I guess I had never heard of it, but there's apparently a game that's popular with kids called Roblox,
Hmm.
and apparently there's a lot of bad things that are happening on that website because it's not very well monitored or moderated. So if you have kids that are playing Roblox, you may want to do some research and see what's going on with that game and how um, your kids might not be just having fun that you think they are, that they might be becoming victims.
Yeah. Um, so as we slowly approach the end of the conversation, I'm curious, what would be your vision for like what would you want to see as a resilience or like resilient community in like 5, 10 years time? What would that look like?
Oh,
What would be the vision?
that um, everybody has, somewhere between a week and 3 months worth of food, set back, that they either have a storage of water or a way to purify water, um, that they have planned for things, um, they have thought through things, um, that they have built a community with their neighbors, um, and that they're just willing to help each other and take the time to be present in what's going on and looking at what's going on around them and get involved in making their community um, more more prepared. Talk to me. I'll tell you how some ways you can start, or just talk to your neighbors and start going to town hall meetings and county supervisor meetings and see what's going on and see if there are things that could be done to improve the overall community safety. Um, I was when I lived in a different town that was I lived in Arlington, Virginia, the county of Arlington, Virginia, which is where the Pentagon is. So after 9/11, that county said we need to be prepared for bad things to happen here, and I was involved in a community emergency response team there. Well, the county that I'm in now is much more rural. It's one of the larger counties in our state. They don't have anything like that.
Hmm.
Um, so that's something that I've been thinking, will I ever be able to find the bandwidth to talk to the county about starting something like that? But then I have to, right now it's like, okay, I have my full-time job, I have my company. Do I have time? But I can at least talk to people, plant some ideas. I've through other people, I've met the county fire chief. I've met the county sheriff. I know some of these people, so I'm slowly developing relationships with them so that at some point I could say, "Hey, I have something I'd like to talk to you about," and I'm not just some weirdo that's just coming up to them, or not even just a weirdo. Just I'm just somebody that they have no idea about
Hmm.
that's throwing ideas at them. I've developed a relationship with them over time so that they know that I didn't just, pull this out of thin air. This is it's based on things that I've been doing for most of my adult life. And
Yeah.
and these are ideas that might have some merit. And so that's one thing people can do is just cultivate relationships with your representatives. I don't like it when people talk about, our leadership. They're not our leaders, they're our representatives. Well, here
Mm.
they are. And in other places it's not quite the same. Um, but we elect them to represent us. We don't elect them to lead us. So I don't
Mm.
like using the term like elected leaders. No, they're elected representatives. But get to know those people, build relationships, and then see how you can influence things in your own community. And if you're in a small community that has a homeowners association, get on that. See how you can influence your community, just your little neighborhood just through that, and then things can slowly build. It's it goes back to what we talked about a long time ago in this thing of, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step.
Exactly. So before I ask you the last question, where can people learn about you, connect with you?
Um, I have my website is www.wksgllc.com. You can email me at scott@wksgllc.com. I have a Facebook page for White Knight Solutions Group. Um, I have an Instagram. I have a LinkedIn page. So search for White Knight Solutions Group, and you should be able to find me. But those are that's my website and my email address, and I'm willing to talk to anybody. I'll provide you whatever information I can. And I will be honest and say, if I don't know something, I will point you in the right direction because I didn't know everything, and I still don't know everything, and I was looking to other people um, throughout my journey to get to this place. I'm still taking classes. I'm still talking to people that know more than me, because nobody ever knows everything. So just if I don't know it, I'll find somebody that can help you. I just want you to have the information. It's not, I don't care where you get it from. If you get it from me, if you get it from somebody else, I want you to have the information, the knowledge, the skills, and what it takes to help you be prepared.
Yeah. So last question I have for you. What is one piece of wisdom you're still learning to live?
Um, so it's part of a Bible verse, and it's I don't have the whole. I'm going to misquote the whole verse, but it's I don't have silver or gold, but what I do have, I will give you. And
Mm.
then it tells the person to stand up and walk. Well, I can't tell anybody to stand up and walk, but I I believe that I don't always have the silver and gold, but what I do have, I will give. I will give my knowledge. I will give my time. I will give my effort to people. And I'm getting better at that. I'm trying to work harder at that. That's part of what led to creating this ministry that I talked about earlier, where I'm going to help churches because I will give what I have. Um, and I think that's something that we should all be doing. It goes back to loving our neighbor as we love ourselves. Um, all these things kind of play together in who I am and why I do what I do. It's um, helping people, giving back, loving my neighbors. It's just been something that even before I knew what it really was, it was there. So that's something I'm always working on, is trying to be better at giving of myself.
Mm. I love it. Um,
And it's hard for me because I'm an introvert, so giving of myself is hard. Now put me up in front of a group of people talking about a subject that I love. I'll teach it. I've presented in front of hundreds of people at a time, and I can make it through that. I usually wear an
but then you
extra
need to recharge.
undershirt. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But it's not as bad though. I don't need to recharge as bad from standing in front of a room full of people as I do after um personally interacting with people. That
Mm.
is more draining because it's I don't know, I get energy from seeing what's going on in the room, and it's easier for me to present something that I know than trying to come up with conversation. So
Mm.
standing there up in front of 400 people teaching, emergency preparedness is much easier than um going to a housewarming party and talking to the neighbors. I'll need to recover
I
more from
can
the
very
neighbors than I
relate
will
to
from the.
this. Yeah, there's some kind. I think there's more of that certainty in delivering what you know, and that also you see that it's being received. And I think there also you add to that like more sense of like purpose or serving within that
Mhm.
context. But then when it comes to
Yeah.
the personal conversations or things like I personally I'm not good at small talk
Right.
or like I would struggle with that. I'm learning, but I'm very deep thinker. I'm very curious and I love to like think about big things or like impact and things like that. So sometimes it's for me a good practice to go to that kind of events and learn to to be like that and to be present. But
Yep.
I can so relate to to what you're
Yep.
saying. Well, Scott, thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing your wisdom.
My
It
pleasure.
was
Thank you for
very,
having me.
very
It's an
fun.
honor.
Yeah, I really look forward to putting this out there because it is very, very like valuable, and I think it's very needed as well. And to all of the listeners, if you're an expert with 20 plus years of experience and you want to share your wisdom, I would love to feature you. There will be details below how you can apply. And if you want to start a podcast, need help with producing or growing your podcast, there will be details below as well. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you in the next episode.